next in line. Lower classes, social slime, they don't matter. Genocide, sick from water, sick from air. Making money, they don't care. Caesar shit, force of air. Fuck them back, it's only for they bomb. They shoot, they kill, they massacre, rape. They burn the kids, no one leaves countries. Lie to your face, fight and die, 'cause God forgives. Selling lies and buying time, killing people next in line. Lower classes, social side, they don't matter. Genocide, sick from water, sick from air. Making money, they don't care. See the shit, force of bear. Fuck them back, that's only fair. They bomb, they shoot, they kill, they massacre, rape. They burn the kids, no one leaves countries. Lie to your face, fight and die, 'cause God forgives. Yeah. Coming back around again.
Welcome to the show. This is called Rock the Boat right here on UCY.tv. I'm your host, Ron Stevens, and I will be so for the next 2 hours. I'm going to spend a fair bit of time on Ontario today. Tomorrow, our premier, who is our latest lunatic at the head of this nonsense, has prorogued the legislature in order to reset, as she says, the agendas, I guess, and to reset the legislature, maybe do a few changes. Apparently, she's getting some heat from all kinds of different people in this province/state. And God knows I call them a lot, and I know a lot of other people call them. And one of the big problems, we discussed it last night, was the price of electricity in Ontario, which has gone from about the least expensive to the most expensive in North America over the last few years, as per planned, in order to run out our two purposes: one to privatize it, and one to destroy our manufacturing base, which they've managed to do both. So Elizabeth Dowdeswell, who is Queen of Ontario, or sitting as Queen, the Queen's proxy, the one who signs legislation into law. So the Queen, people say here in Canada that the Queen is merely a figurehead. And I don't know this has been told to people since I was young, and the fact is, the Queen is the head of the freaking state. The Queen is the head of the corporation. And everything below that are just minions doing the bidding of the head of state. So she sits over there in her castle, and over here we pretend that we're an independent free nation. Nothing could be further from the truth. We're on the plantation, been on the plantation since the get-go. And so tomorrow, this is what I think the important part of today's show is going to be. Hopefully people can get it through their thick freaking skulls that this notion of right and left is nothing more than smoke and mirrors. It is a purpose set up purposely to divide the people of the nations, who constantly fight amongst each other. Yeah, you're one of them crazy liberals. Oh, you're one of them jackass gun-toting or Republicans, or whatever you want to call them. The Democrats and the Republicans fighting for the betterment of the nation. Nothing could be further from truth. They both sleep in the same friggin' bed. Same thing here. We have liberals and conservatives, which are the equivalent of Democrats and Republicans, and they are sleeping in the same bed. And hopefully, by the time we're done the show tonight, you will understand what is being said. Now, I know most of the regular listeners here get it. They understand that the right-left paradigm, if you will, is nothing but a fraud, a con game. It's setting the people up to attack each other, not what is controlling you, not the slave masters. If you're disagreeing with each other, I mean, you walk down any street pretty much anywhere, and you're going to have, you talk to 10 or 20 neighbors. You're going to have devout left wing and devout right wing. Well, your neighborhood is divided. You know, it's almost like racism in a way. The liberals hate the conservatives, and the conservatives hate the liberals. Why? Because they were taught to do so, just like any other form of racism. People are not racist naturally. They're taught to be racist. The guy that hates black people was taught to hate black people. The one that hates Hispanics was taught to hate Hispanics. They don't know why. In most cases, they don't know why. They'll give off some gibberish that was told to them. Oh, they're coming in here and stealing our job. But why are they coming in here? You know, why are they being driven from their lands? What's the problem where they come from? Okay? People don't think very well anymore. They don't ask very pertinent questions. Now, you know, an example is my father-in-law, who's passed now, but great guy, absolutely great guy. He was a liberal because he was a farmer. And the liberals, back in the Trudeau days, Trudeau 1, were offering benefits, social benefits. And it seemed like they cared about the people. And he was a guy that always cared about people, my father-in-law was. And, you know, he was active making sure that people got out to the vote. If they couldn't get there, he would drive them there because he wanted to build a good, you know, nation. It wasn't until later in life that it dawned on him that he'd been suckered by the political system. And that changed him a lot. Still a really good guy, but it's like the light went off in his head and he finally saw and he finally understood and he finally knew the deception that he'd been caught up in. And that's what has to happen. People have to come to the realization that this entire political game is nothing more than smoke and mirrors and way to control the people, way to turn the people against each other. There's no political party on the face of the earth that gives a sweet bejesus about the people, because every nation is a corporation and it's about corporate business. That's all it's ever been about. And cutting deals for their corporate friends and make their corporate friends more wealthy. And it's taking the labor of the people and giving it to their friends. And that should be absolutely illegal. You see all the time where the government of whatever has just, given some company $10, 20, 30, $100 million in order to help create jobs. Wait a minute. Isn't that up to the business to figure out how to go get the money? I mean, if the business plan is so bad that they can't go to one of their buddies' banks and borrow the money, then why in the name of God would the government be handing over your money to finance a business who apparently can't get finance anywhere else? If they have a good business plan, they will get financing. Now, I realize the banking, that's all phony anyways, but what I'm saying is that the businesses and their corporate buddies won't finance each other, will go to the government. Give them a spiel, tell them you're going to create jobs, get a tax advantage, get them to give you the money you need, or most of it, based on the idea of saving or creating jobs, and then we'll just get the taxpayer to pay for it. Sweet. Now that has to be illegal, but apparently it's not, because legal is all about business law. It's not about real law, it's business law, and that's how these guys get away with this nonsense. Anyways, tomorrow, Elizabeth Dowdeswell is going to give a throne speech to reset the direction of the provincial government, supposedly. And this could be quite interesting because Elizabeth Dowdeswell is a criminal, as are all politicians criminals, because all politicians serve the corporation, not the people. They allow the people to believe, vote for me, I wish to be your representative. And the people go, yeah, they sound really good. I'm going to vote for this guy or gal. But you don't vote. You can't vote. Okay? They represent your corporate person, not you. You have never been represented by government. Only your corporate entity has been represented by government. Your corporate entity is what is used as paper to raise money, to guarantee loans, puts you on the hook. Because just like the Queen, who it is stated that Elizabeth, the woman, and the Queen, the corporate entity, Crown, corporation soul, while Elizabeth and the Crown are separate, they're also indivisible, which is a crazy sentence. Because if you're separate, you can't be indivisible. And if you're indivisible, you can't be separate. So the con goes way back, and they've done the same thing with you. Once you were born, you were registered, your parents were offered, especially your mother was offered, benefits. Sign here and you will get government benefits. Why? Because we care about you and your child. Well, that's a lie. Okay? You sold your child, Mom, to the corporation. And for that, when you register anything, you get a bundle of rights. Same as when you buy a piece of property. You get a bundle of rights. Well, those rights are always removable and always addable. You can always add to them. You can always take them away because someone gave you the bundle of rights and they can do whatever they want. They control that bundle of rights. So it is not you that these so-called politicians represent. They represent the monetary value of you. And you have a bundle of rights. That means that they make the new laws that if you seem to be racist or you say anything bad about a Jew or Israel, then you'll have your ass hauled in front of some human rights commission. That's part of your bundle of rights. If you're driving down the road and we decide to pull you over, we have the right because you signed on to it, you're registered, and this is part of your bundle of rights. If we want to drag you into court really with no real charges, that is part of your bundle of rights. Not your bundle of rights, it's the paper rights, the corporate rights, the rights that you are the proxy for. Now, the entity they created for you, the fictional corporate paper entity, and yourself, just like Elizabeth and the crown, are separate but indivisible. And that's all they've done. As they say that the corporate person, of course, is not you, but you're the proxy of it, the agent for it, and therefore, while you, Jim or Jane, are separate from the corporate entity, you are also indivisible. And you've been slaved that way. You've been deceived, you've been lied to since the day you were born. Then we got to break that spell. They put a spell on you. You know, I was thinking this morning, you know, I don't know the words to the song really, but I think it kind of goes like, oh, say, can you see by the day's early dawn or something. And that's kind of a cool line if I got it right. Because can you see by the dawn's early light that you've been lied to and deceived since the day you were born? Look at the light. Understand what the words are. You've been conned. You are on the plantation. So, tomorrow, the queen in place, the proxy for the queen, which is the corporation now. Okay, it's not the Elizabeth. It's Elizabeth Dowdeswell is not representing Elizabeth the woman. Elizabeth Dowdeswell is sitting there as a proxy for the Queen Crown Corporation, and the Queen, while she took the oath on the King James Bible to uphold the law, not the Queen, Elizabeth, the woman, took the oath to uphold the law as per the King James Bible, which goes back to the divine right of kings. It's the only way that they have power to rule is if they follow that law. The moment they break off from that law, they have moved into tyranny. They are treasonous. And that's exactly what's happened. Now, Elizabeth could not have become queen, crown, head of the corporation, head of the state, had she not taken that oath. But again, separate but indivisible. Everybody's wearing two hats. While she's a woman and she took the oath, the woman, the flesh and blood woman, took the oath to uphold the law. But the queen is at the apex of the political and legal systems. Legal is corporate law, not law. Okay? Legal is similar to like but not law. So the queen sits at the apex of the legal and political systems, which are both corporate. And I don't care what country you live in, it's the same game. Okay? They don't recognize you as a man or a woman. They can't recognize you. They can't represent you. They can only represent the legal paperwork that describes you. So there is no representation for the people. There's only representation for the corporate entities. And that's something that has to get rectified. We have to get back to law. The legal system is basically the bundle of rights. Just like when you buy a so-called property, which in itself is described as an abstract concept. because it's just paper. But then when you buy that piece of paper, you register it to the corporation, which in return gives you a bundle of rights that says you can enjoy the property. So while you can buy, it's really just a lease, is all it is. When you purchase property, you're just leasing the land described in the property. You don't own the damn stuff. You don't own the land your house is sitting on, and therefore you don't own your house, because your house is bolted to the land. And he land owns everything on it. You don't own anything. But you did get a bundle of rights. And if you own a home for any length of time, you know that that bundle of rights is forever changing. And it's the same thing, that everything that comes through the legislatures is a bundle of rights. It's all about rights, and rights can be given and rights can be taken away. So now we're going to have our Queen in place, Elizabeth Dowdeswell, give a throne speech tomorrow. And she's going to say whatever it is she says, but the problem is that she's a criminal. How do you know she's a criminal? Well, she was the Undersecretary for UNEP, which was created by Morris Strong and his buddies, the Rockefellers and the bankers and everybody else. The fact that she was employed by the United Nations, or UNEP, which was proves without doubt that she is a criminal. What is the goal of the United Nations? Is the end of nation states. So here we have someone sitting as in place of Queen, as Queen, with the powers, the signing powers of the Queen, head of state, being a member of the United Nations, which whose goal is to destroy nation states. Well, that means that the Queen of England is up to her ass in everything that the UN is doing, which of course makes the Queen a criminal. But then we know they're criminals by their actions and by what they say. All of our politicians end up in, not all of the politicians, the minions, the nobody that doesn't get into cabinet matters, but everyone in cabinet and the Chief Justices end up in the Privy Council, the Queen's Privy Council, the secret closet. And once they're in that secret closet, they take a lifetime oath of secrecy to the Queen, who is the head of state. So anybody in this particular land that thinks that they have representation had better sit up, open the window, and take a good long sniff of the tyranny. Because they took the law away from us completely and gave us the legal system, which is about money and power, not about law. How many people are sitting in jails that have harmed nobody? I mean, that ought to prove the fact that the legal system is not law. So tomorrow, we're going to have Elizabeth Dowdeswell say what she's going to say. Now, here's the kicker. Here's the kicker, and I don't care what country you're in. If you do a little background checking on some of these people, I mean, take Nancy Pelosi down there in the States. She's been around for, I don't know, ever. Been a long time anyways. Now, her and Morris Strong were in cahoots together. And if Morris Strong's name is involved in this, then you know that whoever is on the who's partnered up with Morris Strong is pushing the UN agendas. And the UN was set up as a tax-exempt foundation. And who set up the UN? The other tax-exempt foundations, the Carnegies, the Rockefellers, the bankers, yada, yada, yada. Why did they set it up? World peace? No. How can the UN be about world peace when it took 2 world wars and the death of over 200 million people in order to create the United Nations? How in the hell could anybody for a second believe the United Nations is bringing the nations together for a peaceful world when it took the lives of over 200 million people in 2 world wars to create it? Well, I know that's what you were taught in school. The United Nations was created to end all the wars and make a peaceful world. Well, has there ever been a moment there hasn't been a war since the United Nations was created? Nope. The wars rage on. So how could the United Nations possibly be about peace? It's about power. It's about control of the world. You know, you keep seeing statements that says, you know, the world we want. You read their documents, it's always the world we want. Who wants? Who wants this world? Well, the guys who created the United Nations and killed 200 million people. You really want them in control of your nation? The thieves, the vagabonds, the murderers, you really want to hand your nation over to these people? Do you really want to be part of their international system? Do you want to be under their international law, which supersedes anything that you could create in your own nation? I mean, how daft are we? They killed 200 plus million people and they're still killing. And people still believe that the United Nations is an entity of goodness? This is how badly that we have been deceived by our so-called education systems. The public education system set up and controlled by the very people who set up the United Nations. So your children sitting in the school are being indoctrinated into the world of the United Nations, the world we want. The world what we want is the world that we control all the resources on the planet. We decide how much water, food, clothing, housing you receive. We decide whether or not you live or die. We're the ones that went from sex, male and female, to gender, and they have bent it mightily. But we're not genders. We're people of 2 sexes. You are either a male or a female. Once you move into the gender realm, then you can be any damn thing you want. And this is the world of the United Nations, the Catholic Church, if you will. Back to Rome, back to the religion of Rome, which is most definitely not Christian. Everything that we've ever been taught is the opposite of what reality is supposed to be. And we got to come to terms with this stuff. We can't keep pretending that what is isn't. You know, I get a lot of flack from people over on Facebook, and I find it rather humorous in a way. When I put a post out there saying, that, if you think about it, the guys who set up the United Nations are the same guys that set up Israel. And it did take 2 world wars and the death of over 200 million people most of them innocents, not combatants, for these lunatics, these psychopaths, these sociopaths, to get what they wanted. And that was a world government body and a state of Israel. And I get people going, well, yeah, we get it about the United Nations, but you're wrong about Israel. Wrong answer. If you support Israel, then you support, well, you don't support anything good, that's for sure. They are players. They are partners in this global crime that's ongoing. And we got to come to terms with it. There is no right, there is no left. There are people. There are men and women. And those men and women had better shed this nonsense of right and left, which has done nothing except what it was designed to do, and that is to divide and conquer the people. And the people have been divided and conquered. All you got to do is look around, turn on a left-wing TV or pick up a left-wing newspaper and then pick up a right-wing or go to a right-wing news station. And you will see how they've accomplished and how successful they have been at dividing and conquering the people. The people are looking for someone to save the day. Well, the only ones that are going to save the day are those people who, when they look in the mirror, I'm talking average Jane and John Doe, those are the people. Those are the only people that have the capacity to save their nation. Now, the Queen, whose husband, I mean, it kills me. I mean, the royal family's German, for crying out loud. So we got Germans sitting in the palaces in England. Duh. But we got Prince Charles, who, not Prince Charles, but Prince Philip, the Queen's, or Elizabeth's husband, who states specifically, and he was the first one indoctrinated or put into the Privy Council, says that when he dies, he wants to come back as a deadly virus to cull the population. That would be you. Now, as the corporations become more robotic, they need what? Less hands to create the products they create. It is becoming supremely automated. So what do we do when we have too big of a labor force? I think it was Kissinger that called us useless eaters. So now we have the overpopulation game, which is sewn tightly together with the global warming scenario. That the two, while separate, are indivisible. In order to save the planet, well, somebody's got to leave. And according to them, the number is pretty high. But if you look from the corporate side of it, what do we need all these people for? We needed these slaves in the fields, i.e. the factories, in the past, in order to pick the cotton or to make transistor radios or whatever. But we've automated agriculture, so we don't need those slaves in the cotton field anymore. And we've roboticized the manufacturing industry, so we don't need those same slaves in the factories anymore. So why are we using up all the Earth's resources of which we own? Wouldn't it be easier if there was less people? We'd have less paperwork. We'd have less people to deal with. We'd have less people bitching and complaining that they don't have nowhere to live. They're not getting fed properly, yada, yada, yada. Let's get rid of them. As Gorbachev says, get rid of 92% of the population. Environmental problem solved. So they have tied you to the global warming, got people all jacked up. Oh my God, what are we going to do? The globe's going to burn up. And not realize that they're the target. That's the only reason CO2 was picked. The only reason CO2 was picked is this deadly, dangerous gas, which in fact, without CO2, the world can't survive. And not too much CO2 that the world can't survive, it's too little CO2 and the world can't survive. People need CO2, or the trees, the plants need CO2 to survive. And what do we produce? We produce CO2. Every time you exhale, you're exhaling CO2. And what happens? The plants breathe that in. That's their oxygen source. And in return, they exhale oxygen, which we breathe in. The natural cycle. And they turn around and tell you that CO2 is a danger to the globe. What they're telling you is that you are a danger to their power structure. That's what they're telling you. You, again, are the problem. And how are we going to fix the problem? Well, if we screw up their food, that should shorten their lives. That should possibly give them cancers. It was Kissinger again who said, control the food, control the people. There's so little real food left on this planet, it's nuts. Anybody that does try to grow natural food is likely going to get raided by the house nigger bosses. Those same house niggers that used to whoop their friends and their own families in the cotton fields. The same house niggers that ruled over the factory workers. It's so simple. When you start looking at things with clear eyes and hearing with good ears, it becomes so obvious so quickly. There is a solution. There is a solution to the wars. There is a solution to the hunger. There is a solution to the lack of housing. And the solution is very simple. These so-called benefactors, these so-called leaders, have to be removed. Because they care not for you and your family. They despise you and your family. And that has to get dealt with. And then we got to get back to law. If we just went back to law, you would find that peace and freedom would just arrive about the next day. People have been trained to hate one another. Not because people hate one another, but it benefits those who rule. That way you never look seriously at the ruling bodies who enslave you and send your families off to wars for the corporate benefit. Anyways, tomorrow, Elizabeth Dowdeswell is going to give a throne speech. Dowdeswell was born in Belfast, Northern Ireland in 1944 and moved with her family to Canada in 1947, settling in rural Saskatchewan. Her father, Desmond Paton, was a United Church of Canada minister. One of the dirtiest churches on, well, they're all dirty. There isn't a clean church out there. If it's registered to the government, then you know that it's a government body. It's a political entity, is what the churches are. They do the bidding of those in control, or they're going to lose their status. Simple as that. So anyways, Dowdeswell left teaching and entered public service, serving in Saskatchewan as Deputy Minister of Culture and Youth during the new Democratic government of Alan Blakeney. Now, Alan Blakeney is dead, and I wrote a piece on my blog outing who Alan Blakeney was. And he is an international player as well, and the New Democratic Party was part of, or is part of, Socialist International. So she was Deputy Minister of Culture and Youth, but was dismissed along with her other deputy ministers after the Progressive Conservative government of Grant Devine took power in 1982. She served in federal public service in the 80s, serving at one point as Assistant Deputy Minister at Environment Canada. Now they've changed the name now. It's not Environment. It's Environment and Climate Change, just to rub it in a little bit. With responsibility for atmospheric environment service and negotiating the Framework Convention on Climate Change. She also led a public inquiry into Canada's unemployment benefit program, federal water policy. We're going to talk about water here in a little while. In 1992, Dowdeswell was unanimously elected to lead the United Nations Environmental Program, UNEP, created by Morris Strong and Rockefeller and the boys, to really kick up the environmental problems. She served there till 1998 at the rank of Under Secretary General. From 1998 to 2010, she was an adjunct professor at McLaughlin-Rotman Center for Global Health at the University of Toronto, while also serving as a founding president and CEO of the Nuclear Waste Management Organization. Now, I have the book with Elizabeth Dowdeswell's signature in it of the Nuclear Waste Management Organization. And I want to thank Mark from Sudbury, who gave me that book. And so here we have, she was head of environment, or assistant deputy minister of environment. She's with the United Nations UNEP program out of Kenya, under Secretary General, and Nuclear Waste Management Organization. This is the same organization looking to bury nuclear waste basically on the shore of Lake Huron. Now, what kind of an environmentalist would want to bury nuclear waste right beside I think, the single largest network of fresh water on the planet? Would an environmentalist do that? One would think not. I got to maybe take a phone call here real quick.
Thank you for calling. Hi, artist. It's just Sharon. I'm calling to say I might be about 5 minutes late, okay?
Sharon, I'll let her know, okay? Okay. Sorry about that. There's a friend of my wife's. We're going to go shopping here, and you got to do what you got to do, right? So anyway, we have this from UNEP, which was founded by Morris Strong. Now we have this woman who's head of the nuclear waste management, who who is trying to bury nuclear waste on the shore of Lake Huron. Now, that makes sense because these are not environmentalists. Maurice Strong, who started UNEP, was involved over at the Baca Ranch in California with a bunch of people. And if you look up, I mean, the best explanation I've ever seen of that, if you just look up George Hunt and watch his old videos, that were actually done way back in VHS days, when he investigated what was going on there. Maurice Strong, and I forget the guy's name now, who either was then or shortly thereafter was head of the EPA in the United States, and a few other players were working hard to get the rights to sell the water out of the aquifer. For what? Environmental reasons? No, for profit. Wait a minute. Isn't Maurice Strong like the father of the environmental movement? But the environmental movement is a con game. And once you understand who some of these people are, you realize it's a con game. Plain and simple. And people got to wake up to that. Now, people are always bitching about the liberals and always bitching about the conservatives or the Democrats and Republicans. Now, Dowdeswell was appointed lieutenant governor by Governor General, so this is provincial lieutenant governor, and federal Governor General, David Johnston, who has quite a history himself, on the advice of Prime Minister Stephen Harper. Wait a minute, didn't we just go through years of the liberals and the environmentalists hating conservative Prime Minister Stephen Harper because he was against the environment and he was this and that and so on and so forth, and he liked oil and the liberals didn't like oil, and he was trying to destroy the planet and the liberals are trying to save the planet. So we have this massive splitting of the populace, the divide and conquer, the fighting against each other and never realizing what the hell's going on. Prime Minister Stephen Harper, conservative, selected Dowdeswell from a short list devised by the Advisory Committee on Vice-Regal Appointments. So wait a minute here. The conservative Prime Minister selected Dowdeswell to be the lieutenant governor. Well, if he was anti-environment, then why would he select someone who was Undersecretary General of United Nations and head of UNEP or whatever? Why would he do that? Well, it's the same reason that it was the conservatives here, the Prime Minister of Canada, Brian Mulroney, who signed us on to Agenda 21 in 1992. Just like it was George Bush Sr. who signed the Americans on to Agenda 21 in 1992. These are conservatives. And immediately after that was done, then we have a change of power. And we have Clinton in America, who immediately implemented throughout all bodies of government the implementation of Agenda 21. Now, if these conservatives and liberals, Republicans, Democrats are like opposite poles, then why are they working so closely together? Because they all sleep together. They're all out of the same stable. There is only one party, and it's called the corporation. And they do play a little game with the people. And that's been going on forever. So on September 23rd, 2014, she was sworn in during a ceremony held at Queen's Park in Toronto, during which she addressed members of the Ontario Cabinet, members of provincial parliament, and other guests. She is the third woman to serve in the position, following Pauline Mills Gibbon and Hillary Weston. Breaking the tradition, Dowdeswell declared in her installation's address that she would not immediately espouse a particular area of focus during her mandate as Lieutenant Governor. Instead, she set out to engage the people of Ontario, listening to their concerns and ideas. In the time since her installation, she has said that the idea of Ontario in the world, as well as the interconnected themes of sustainability, environmental stewardship, inclusive economic prosperity, and innovation, and social and cultural inclusion, have resonated with Ontarians. Well, that's the UN agenda she just described. So here we have the Lieutenant Governor, Elizabeth Dowdeswell, sitting as Queen, of which no legislation can be turned into law, not law, but similar, like to color of law, until the Queen, Elizabeth Dowdeswell, with the powers of the Queen, as far as the legislature is concerned here, signs it into so-called law. So now she's been sitting back, being kind of quiet. And I know I did see a video of her, and there are some videos of her out there. And she was complaining at UNEP that she is sick and tired of this incremental changes. It's taken for frickin' ever. I just want it done. So now she's going to give a speech tomorrow, a throne speech, and she's been apparently running around Ontario getting the feel of the populace. Well, the only message the populace has been getting for the last 30 years is about sustainability, environmental stewardship, inclusive economic prosperity and innovation, social and cultural inclusion, and so on and so forth, and interconnectivity and sustainability. So now it's time for her to step forward and give a throne speech. So we know pretty much what this throne speech is going to be about. It'll probably be pro-migrant, that we have a duty to bring these poor, war-affected people into the country. The more the merrier. We have the Prime Minister. I don't know if he's still in China or not. If he's not in China, he's somewhere taking selfies. This is a guy whose claim to fame is his daddy was Prime Minister. His daddy was a member of the Club of Rome. His daddy was Jesuit trained. His daddy was a treasonous piece of garbage that's conned so many people, including myself, when I was about, how old would I have been, 12? He was like, he was kind of like a Canadian, he was looked upon almost as a Canadian JFK, if you will, both kind of holding rock star status. And as a young guy, you know, the women were all fawning over this idiot, and great con man. The media never told us the background of this guy, but then the media never does, because the media's job is to not tell you the truth, to only shove what is necessary to continue to move the globalist program forward, the globalist corporate program forward. So we have a conservative who's been bitched about in the media and by the liberal side and the Green side, the NDP side, which are all the left side, for being anti-environment, and then he turns around and says that he turns around and selects Maura's strong sidekick to be the lieutenant governor of Queen and Place of Ontario. Now, I put this out, and people go, well, there's no freaking way that Harper appointed Elizabeth Dowdeswell. Well, he doesn't have the power to appoint, but he does do the selection, okay, which is basically the appointment. And they give the advisory committee on vice-regal appointments comes up with the short list, of which the prime minister picks one. Now, I don't know how short the list was. It could have been Dowdeswell was the only name on the list, because they knew who they want in place. And this is what they do. So people think that they're voting for representation. Just stop it. You are not, you have not, you never will until we change it. And if we don't change it, well, it's just going to continue to spiral downward. And you will find that people are living much shorter lives than they previously did. Because if they don't get you with the food and they don't get you with the water, they're going to get you with the vaccines. And if none of those things work terribly well, then they will offer you, when they get you sick enough or you become old enough, then they will be there to once again be your benefactor and offer to put you out of your misery with a assisted suicide paid for by the state. And I don't know why people can't get that simple reality through their head. Well, the government, they're given this money or that. The government doesn't have any money, never had any money. The only money the government ever had is what came out of your pockets. So everything that's wrong in our nation, who's responsible for it? We are. Why? Because we fund it. We allow them to remove our labor from our pockets and spend it on programs that is destroying the nation. And they borrow the money from their buddies coming off of their printing presses, charging you compound interest on something that really doesn't even exist. It's just paper. But we live in a paper world with paper people. Something created of the mind, not real. Real estate is not real. It's a concept, something created in the mind. There's nothing real about real estate. And this is how they con us. Stupid word games. And we keep falling for it. And we got to stop doing that. So the lieutenant governor, who obviously we know the Queen's involved in this because the Queen's the head of state. And, would the Queen allow something to be instituted as Queen in Place, who's bound to destroy this province, i.e. this nation? Would the head of state allow that? Not if the Queen was not involved in this, and they're up to their ass in this nonsense. So we have our head of state working to destroy the nation and its people. That's tyranny. That's treason. But It's exactly what it is, because when the queen, when Elizabeth, the woman, turned away from the law and jumped full board on with the bankers and the lawyers to the legal system and abandoned the law, she at that point has no more authority to govern. So we have been in a state of tyranny for a very, very long time. And that's why everything that comes through the legislature says the color and force of law. Because they have no legitimate reason to be there. They are not a legitimate government. They are outside of the law. They are, in fact, outlaws. And they are pillaging every man and woman on the planet. And we're letting them do it. That makes absolutely no sense. But that's how we were brought up. That's how we were schooled. Now, I love this. Elizabeth Dowdeswell. We have a Liberal government in power in Ontario. Pierre's little boy, Justin, is now the Prime Minister. Justin has no experience in anything. I think he taught snowboarding or something at one point. A complete airhead. He's not evil, he's just a fool. He's not smart enough to be evil. Dowdeswell is evil. Morris Strong is evil. Rockefeller is evil. Soros is evil. Rothschild is evil. The Queen is evil. The Queen's husband is evil. And so on and so forth. Little Justin Trudeau. And Wynne. Premier of Ontario, Kathleen Wynne. I don't really believe that either one of them are evil. Neither one of them's a lawyer, which is rare, really rare, to have people in those positions that are not lawyers. But Elizabeth Wynne's claim to fame is that she's a lesbian. So she's used to push the gender equality situation. Okay, just like Conley, I think his name was, the last lieutenant governor here, when they were pushing wheelchair access and all of that kind of access for everyone. They were pushing that. It's a UN agenda. His claim to fame was he was a weatherman in a wheelchair. How does this guy become the lieutenant governor? And what does he know about legislative process or law? But he is there signing all of these papers that come through the legislature, all these new rules, regulations, statutes, and that into law. He's not a lawyer. He don't know nothing about law. He was a freaking weatherman who apparently had a little talk show host in his wheelchair because they were using him to push an agenda. Now, I actually called the lieutenant governor's office when Conley, I think his name was lieutenant governor. I said, this guy sits in place of the Queen, and nothing that goes through the legislature, nothing voted on in the legislature can become color and force of law without the signature of the Queen in place. Now, we know this guy is not a lawyer, so he doesn't know anything about he doesn't know how to read legalese. Now, does he read these things, or does he just sign them? And the answer I got from the lieutenant governor's office was, no, he just signs them. So here's the one who is supposed to make sure that things are on the up and up, who doesn't even read them. Okay? So the Queen is not doing her job. Anyways, this just gets more silly all the time. This is from the foundation. Well, this is is this in French? No, it's actually stories in this is the Pierre Elliott Trudeau Foundation. Now, Elizabeth Dowdeswell. What is Elizabeth Dowdeswell doing on the Pierre Elliott Trudeau Foundation site? Well, she is the Lieutenant Governor of Ontario. Previously, she was President and CEO of Council of Canadian Academies after being the Undersecretary General of the United Nations. She was the Trudeau mentor of 2003 Trudeau scholars Annalisa Aunino and Ginger Gibson. Elizabeth Dowdeswell is the 29th Governor of Ontario. Previously, she was the President and CEO at Council of Canadian Academies. Yada, 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 yada. So we find her mentoring over at the Trudeau Foundation. And again, why would Stephen Harper, a conservative, if the Liberals and the Conservatives are loggerheads all the time, then why would the Prime Minister of Canada go out of his way to select someone who was a mentor for the Trudeau Foundation to be the Lieutenant Governor, Queen in Place in Ontario? Because they're on the same team. They're all on the same team. And people got to come to terms with this. I mean, I don't know how people in this day and age can still be suckered in by this right-left nonsense. You know? And I'm going to say it again. If you're one of these people that run around and listen to online internet shows, and you're listening to shows where someone's yammering on about Trump versus Hillary Clinton, or vice versa, then shut it off. Because the show you're listening to is a player, is part of the deception, is part of the divide and conquer. And you should not waste any time listening to that garbage. I do not believe that any host that is hosting an online radio show in 2016 can possibly be ignorant enough not to understand the divide and conquer use of the right-left. So if somebody's out there and they're yammering on about, you know, vote Trump, or vote Hillary, then shut them off. Shut them down. Get them out of your head. Because if you still believe in 2016 that there is any difference between the left and the right, then you still do not have your mind right. You still don't see. You still don't hear. You don't know. And if you don't get it, you're going to continue to be deceived. And there's an old saying, let no man deceive you, or you shall be as cattle, chattel, slaves. And that's exactly what we are. We are chattel, cattle, assets, and slaves of the corporation set up as our country's, nation's government. And that has got to stop. We have got to stop believing that the government at any level is there for your benefit. They feed on you. You know, you could almost use the Kissinger situation where, you know, control the food, control the people. You know, we have to control our minds. We have to come to terms with the reality. We are supposed to be controlling them, not them controlling us. They are to serve us. We are not to serve them. So they've managed to flip the boat upside down and put us into a fictional life, a fictional reality. And that's why I like that movie so much, or at least that one scene in that movie in Pirates of the Caribbean when they're flipping the boat. It dawned on them that they're upside down, that they're not really in reality. They're in a fictional world. They are in Alice in Wonderland. And if you look around at the politics today and what your government's doing, you can't help but understand this is all fictional, that this is Alice in Wonderland. And we got to get back up on the surface. And we got to get back to law. Because in the fictional world, they can write whatever they want. They can enact whatever they want. They can harm you. They can remove your God-given rights any way they want. And they say there's nothing you can do about it. Well, wait a minute. Who's serving who here? We got to put our foot down. If we don't feed them, they can't survive. And what are they feeding on? Us, our labor. Because without our labor, they can't be in power. If we cut off their food supply, they die. They wither up and die. And that's why, you know, when I got thinking about that thing from, that saying from Shakespeare, first, kill all the lawyers. And I'm not a violent guy. I don't want to see bloodbaths in the street. That's the last damn thing I ever want to see. It's what they want. They want us to pick up arms and start shooting. And that can justify any action they take thereafter. And then they can turn basically the patriots. They can turn the people against the patriots through the propaganda because they own the media. But when I looked up the word kill, understanding that Shakespeare spoke in metaphors and whatnot, was he really saying go out and physically kill these lawyers? I don't think so. Nullify their power. In other words, quit feeding the system, quit participating in their system. And that will kill the lawyers. You can't have law with the lawyers writing legal garbage. You can't have law when you're in a courtroom that speaks legalese. You can't get any farther away from law than that. And that's why we're in the mess we're in. It's really quite simply that simple. So I'm much looking forward to Elizabeth Dowdeswell's her throne speech tomorrow. It's going to be very, very interesting of what she's going to be up to here. I don't know how her and Morris Strong got connected. I don't know how. I mean, they do have, just like hockey scouts or any other sports scout, they have scouts in the music industry. They have scouts everywhere looking for people that they can use. And so I don't know. I don't know how they got connected, but she is a real UN minion. Okay, David Onley was the last lieutenant governor here in Ontario, a weatherman, signing off legislation into law, color of and force of law. Knows nothing about any law. The traffic courts and that are riddled. In fact, here in Ontario, not one justice of the peace who sits on the provincial offences court is a lawyer. None of them know anything about law. And yet there they are sitting there giving legal opinion and dipping their sticky little fingers into people's pockets and taking their money. They even have the power to throw you in jail. Yet they're not judges. They're not lawyers. They could be a weatherman. An awful pile of them are ex-school teachers, vice principals, principals. So you get your ticket and you go to court, and where are you? Are you in a court? No, you're in the vice principal's office, getting your wrist slapped the same as you did in public school. That's what they've done. They've never allowed you to be a man or a woman. They've held you in the child position. You are in their house. You live in their fictional house, and therefore you abide by their fictional rules. It's time we grew up and left the house. It's time we took the responsibility upon ourselves to be a man or a woman and build our own houses. Every single thing that has ever been legislated has caused harm to the people. Every single one of them. Law states very specifically it is against the law to cause harm, yet everything, every rule, regulation, statute that has ever been brought through and given the color and force of law has caused harm. Taking away your God-given rights to move about as you please, to do as you please, so long as you cause no harm to anyone. And then they came in with thousands upon thousands upon thousands of rules, regulations, and statutes and whatnots, telling you what you can and can't do, even though everything they put through, you didn't cause any harm. Now you call it crime prevention. How the hell do you prevent a crime? But the fact is that your legislature is a band of outlaws, highwaymen, stealing from you and calling it law, which makes your legislatures outlaws, which makes your politicians outlaws. They take an oath to serve, but not you. They take an oath to serve a piece of paper. And it's a corporate piece of paper. Every politician, everyone in the army, every police officer, every judge, and so on and so forth takes an oath to serve the paper, not the people. You know, my buddy there who went to, he was in a UN contingent, or they went on a peacekeeping mission or something when he was minor, 18 years old. Then he went and he was going to join the army because he wanted to help people. He'd heard all the stories about the war, and the UN was, you know, the body of peace and goodness on the planet. And he thought he had a duty to be part of that, because that's what he was told, and that's what he believed. And when it came time to take the oath to join the army, he noticed that the oath was to the Queen. Well, the Queen is a piece of paper. It's a corporate chunk of paper. It's fictional. And he questioned it. Why am I not taking an oath to serve the people? And he was told he didn't have to take the oath, but he didn't take the oath. He couldn't join the army. So while he hesitated, he was only 18 years old, was probably presented with his ideas. It was a stupid question. Either sign it or don't sign it. Take the oath or don't take the oath. Get in or get out. And he went on a UN mission, believing the UN and the media and the teachers that the United Nations was formed in order there should never be any more war on the planet and the people should be free and yada, yada, yada. And they got to where they were going, some village somewhere. And he had a little blue helmet on, and he was proud to be a man of peace, working for an organization of world peace. And he was waiting for the people when they got to the village to come. As he said, he was actually expecting the people of the village to run up and hug them and bring them flowers and stuff, because after all, this was the United Nations. This was the global body of peace and freedom. He was absolutely astounded when they rolled into the village and the people caught wind that the UN was in the village, and they all scattered. They took off. They understood what the UN is. They understood it completely. It is the most evil entity that was ever foisted upon the planet, created by the most evil psychopaths that have ever lived on the planet. And yet most people, well, you know, I joined an NGO that's, working on sustainability for the planet, with the United Nations. No clue. No clue whatsoever. But then how could they have a clue? They came through an education system run by the very psychopaths that started the United Nations. But anyways, Dougie, he talked to his, I've said this before, Dougie, talked to his sergeant going like, I'm confused. Like I thought people would be so happy to see us from the UN. And the sergeant had said, Doug just said, the sergeant looked at me and said, hang around for a couple of weeks. You'll understood why they ran. But this isn't what you hear in the media, is it? This is not what you hear in the media. Because the media is controlled by the very guys that set up the United Nations. They're control freaks. And they want to control every aspect of your life. Now, why would you allow anyone to do that to you? We got to get back to law. It's just that freaking simple. We have got to get back to law. We have to just tell them straight out that we're not going to do this. We are not going to respect a fraud. Because fraud is against the law. Deception is fraud. And everything you have done has been to deceive us, which is fraud, which is against the law. So for us to obey you means that we are now outside the law. And I ain't going there. I'm a lawful man. Now, I advise everyone to get that through their thick skulls. We've got to get back to law. The legal system is a system of outlawry. It's outside the law. It has nothing to do with the law. It's the opposite of the law. And people say, well, how do you break the system? You change the system. You bring back law. Anybody that's not dealing in law is what? It's an outlaw. Well, an outlaw has obviously done something criminal. And you're being ruled by criminals. Now, do you wish to be ruled by criminals? If that's what you want, then welcome to the plantation. Enjoy your slavery. Enjoy your servitude. But if you're a real man or a woman who can still understand that there are only two sexes, male and female, and the gender is just another manipulative tool used to screw with people. If you believe that you are a man, you believe that you are a woman, and not some corporate piece of paper, then you need to stand up and voice that opinion. Because if we don't, they're going to smoke us. And you say, look what they did. They didn't do anything. We allowed them to do it. So we consented to our slavery. We consented to the death of family members that gone to corporate wars. We consented to the poisoning of our food and our water and our children through all these vaccinations. We consented to the removal of our food and the replacement by poisonous GMO garbage. We consented to all of these things. Therefore, who is guilty? We are. We are. And we have to accept that responsibility. But now that we see that we've been deceived and conned, we have a responsibility to set things right. And if we fail to do so, then we have no one, nobody to blame but ourselves. And that's just the way it is. They're taking your water. They're selling everything off to their corporate buddies. This is exactly, if you go look at Russia or the Soviet Union, whatever you want to call it, when the so-called Iron Curtain came down, exactly what happened then is happening in the West now. All of the assets were sold, were given to corporate buddies. An awful pile of them had been in the government. They filled their pockets. And that's what's going on here now. You are being raped. Now, in the old days, if somebody was raping somebody, there would be something done about it ASAP. because that was wrong. Now we've turned into nations of whiners and complainers and placard holders and people who fill out petitions. And as long as we're filling out petitions and as long as we're holding our little placards, be it left, right, or be it against GMO foods or fluoride or anything else, as long as we are standing in the streets with our little placards and our petitions, these people feel very, very safe. Because they know as long as you're holding them petitions or signing those petitions and sending them into the garbage can of whatever institution you're sending them to, and as long as you're holding those little placards up in the street going, nah, 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 they got you where they want you. They got you where they want you. Now I can find this thing. Is this where this is? Here's a lawyer. Here's a lawyer. It's a judge. There's a federal judge. There's a federal. I think this is about that rape case. Let me just look at this. Yeah, it sounds like it. A federal court judge, which means it's a lawyer, facing possible removal from the bench for inappropriate remarks he made to a sex assault complainant, admits his knowledge of Canadian criminal law at the time. At the time this guy looks to be probably early mid-60s. This is a federal judge who said some pretty harsh to a rape victim. And said that at the time that he was sitting on the bench hearing this case, that his knowledge of Canadian criminal law at the time was non-existent. Excuse me? You're a federal judge sitting on a bench in a Canadian court at the federal level, and you're saying that this is him trying to get out from under the trouble he's in, right? Admits his knowledge of Canadian criminal law at the time was non-existent. The Canadian Judicial Council determining the fate of Justin Robin Camp, who has apologized for his attitude toward the questioning of the 19-year-old woman in 2014. Well, it's only 2016. And this guy, by the look at it, has been around quite a while. And he's a federal judge, but at the time, in 2014, my knowledge of Canadian criminal law at that time in 2014 was, well, hey, non-existent. This is what fictional looks like, folks. Okay, this is Alice in Wonderland horseshit. Okay, we got to get away from this. Like, this is no good. Camp, who was then a provincial court judge, acquitted the man accused in the case after deciding that his version of events was more credible. Court transcripts show that Camp questioned the woman, why couldn't you just keep your knees together, and told her that pain and sex sometimes go together. The transcripts also show he called the woman the accused throughout the trial. The verdict was overturned on appeal and a new trial was ordered. Camp's excuses come at a cost of public trust. Well, if you trust the legal system, then you're a fool. The legal system, well, I mean, Here we have a guy sitting on a bench who's been there a long, long time, saying that 2 years ago he had no knowledge of criminal law, Canadian criminal law. That's an excuse for why he did what he did to this young girl. The legal experience of Camp, who was born in South Africa but moved to Calgary in 1998, has been under the microscope at this hearing. He originally had a legal aid practice, which included some criminal law, but he has become, as he became more senior, he focused mainly on contractual, bankruptcy, and trust law, as well as oil and gas litigation. Camp was named an Alberta provincial court judge in 2012, but did not receive training or judicial education on sexual assault law or how to conduct sex assault trials. So this is his excuse, right? My colleagues knew my knowledge of Canadian law was very minimal. It was non-existent, Camp admitted under questioning from members of the judicial panel Friday. I think it became apparent that I didn't know. I didn't know what I don't know. Manitoba Jaw, who mentored Camp after his comments became public, said he didn't know the history of sexual assault law in Canada and why it historically discriminated against women. Please remember, I wasn't in this country through the 60s, 70s, 80s, Camp told the hearing. I was in South Africa, where we had other issues. When asked what he had done to prepare for his job as a provincial court judge, he said he had spoken to other judges on the bench and done a lot of reading. When I started on the bench, I was given the 50 most important cases used by provincial court judges. He said, I read the sections on the commentary. I read the leading cases. Camp was asked if this experience in Canadian criminal law was quite restricted, and he replied it was. One of the panel members, Nova Scotia Association Chief Justice Deborah Smith, asked Camp if he had attended a school for new judges offered by the National Judicial Institute of the Calgary Courthouse at the library, the law library. There are judges there that are available. Where am I here? That are available, and if you have questions or concerns or gaps in your education, you can ask the teaching judges these questions, Smith said. If you felt there was a gap in your background in that area of criminal law, you could go to the judicial library and borrow some textbooks in the areas you thought you weren't sufficiently educated. Camp apologized Friday for his comments to the young woman, calling them rude and insulting, though he also made reference to her again as the accused before quickly correcting himself. At some level that I wasn't aware of, I was subject to prejudice, the prejudice that all women behave the same way and they should resist, he told the hearing. He said, if allowed to stay on the bench, he will make every effort to avoid past mistakes. I can't guarantee that I am not prejudiced in other areas, but what I've learned is to be constantly vigilant and to ask for help when I need it, he said. I was and will always be vigilant. Perfect I will never be. Closing arguments are to take place Monday. The panel will forward a recommendation to the full Canadian Judicial Council and will then forward its final recommendations to the Federal Justice Minister. Welcome to the judicial system in Canada, and anywhere else for that matter. Without a jury, you are not in a court of law. Let no man judge you. That's law. And what have we got in the legal system? We have men judging others who are they're not capable. If you go to a judge and he has had a fight with his wife, or his kid did something stupid, or he lost some money on the stock market, or whatever, mood he's in or she's in that day will have an effect on the outcome of your case. If the judge sitting there doesn't like your hair length, your attitude, your look, your color, that will have an outcome on your case. And this case here it really puts it out there for people to see how ludicrous this idea that a man should judge you. No man should judge you. No man can judge you. No man has the capacity to judge you. And when they took away the juries, they took away the law. It's that simple. I don't care if you're there for a jaywalking ticket. If there is only a man or woman there to judge you, you are not in a court of law. You are in a corporate administrative office. And that's all you're in. And except for the most heinous crimes, such as murder and manslaughter and stuff like that, which generally have a jury, but then the accused can ask not to have a jury. But this is why the Lord's Prayer has been taken out of the legislative bodies, out of the state houses, out of your local council chambers, out of the schools. Because that's law. Now, they played it off on this religious stuff that, well, you know, what about this religion is better than that religion? Doesn't make any sense, so we'll just take it out of the schools. That was the taking, or that was the separation. I don't want to call it church, but that's what they call it, the separation of church and government. But what it really was the separation of law from the government. So the government no longer had to be in law, that the government could run in the corporate legal system, ignoring the law and entering into tyranny and outlawry against the people that it claims to represent. But this here little story of a judge who claims ignorance about rape means that any judge anywhere on any bench who gets caught doing something stupid can use the same excuse. I was really good on rape, but they put me in charge of a contract dispute, and I don't know anything about contracts, so don't look at me. Yeah, I'll go to the library and I'll get somebody to mentor me on whatever law it is I'm saying I don't know nothing about, even though I didn't excuse myself on the bench when I was put on the bench to look at this case. I did not at any time say I don't believe I have the capacity to deal with this. I studied some case law, but not that case law. Therefore, I'm not liable. And see, there's the beauty of it, right? There's the beauty. We go back to responsible. We gave you responsible government. Oh, that's good. So you're responsible, right? Wrong. It states very specifically, at least here in Canada, and the people in the other countries might want to look the same thing up. I'm pretty sure you'll find the exact same kind of nonsense. We gave you responsible law, but then it states that the word responsible in responsible law doesn't have the meaning of the word responsible. So responsible government you gave us doesn't mean responsible government. What is it then? Oh, it's irresponsible. See, none of these people ever seem to be liable. Okay, you look crooked at a traffic light, you're going to get a distracted driving ticket. These guys are here on the bench destroying people's lives, Then when they get caught, hey, don't look at me. I ain't responsible. I'm not responsible. And that's exactly what it is. Responsible means you are obligated, you are liable, you are chargeable, and so on and so forth. Illegal or irresponsible, on the other hand, means you are not bound by legal rules, regulations, laws, and statutes. Okay? So your government is irresponsible. When was the last time a government was ever held responsible for throwing several $billion out the window to a buddy to create some jobs who pocketed the money and then immediately bankrupted the company, and you're on the hook for it? You're not just on the hook for it, you're on the hook for it at compound interest. Now, has anybody ever in government, nobody that I'm aware of, has ever been responsible, held responsible for their actions? Regardless of how ludicrous, how badly thought out, or how crazy this said money was spent or thrown out the window. Well, if you don't like it, you can always vote somebody in the next time. That's the depth of the responsibility. In other words, we're not responsible for jack. You're responsible for everything because we made you responsible. I mean, we did say we're not responsible, didn't we? Because we told you the word responsible and responsible government does not have the meaning of the word responsible. You're responsible. You, the people, are responsible, not us. And if you're stupid enough to vote us in and you don't like what we did, then be stupid and vote somebody else in. And we'll just continue the corporate cycle here. And we will continue to rape and pillage you. But you won't ever hold us responsible. Because we're not. We're running a fictional game here. And we're feeding off of you and loading up our pockets, and you're too stupid to do anything about it. Well, then you get exactly what you deserve. And that I can agree with them upon. It's us that are the problem. We don't hold anybody responsible. I mean, 8 years I have listened to online hosts yammer on about, well, you know, Obama wasn't born in America, therefore he can't be the freaking president. Well, he's just done 2 terms. Is he ever held responsible? Not a chance. Besides that, the United States is a corporation. You do not have to be born in America to be the CEO of a freaking corporation. But none of these online radio hosts get any of that stuff. Or are they just dragging you along by the nose? I would conclude that most of them are. That's why I say you have to keep your eyes open and your ears alert whenever you are listening or reading anything. People tend to want to hear things and listen to things and believe things. That's the easiest way to get suckered you will ever come across. You know, and anybody can lie to you all they want. And you might get pissy when you find out, wait a minute here. But whose fault is it? They're doing what they do, and you got suckered by it. Whose fault is that? Theirs? No, yours. And that goes back, and I'm going to keep on repeating this till it's in everybody's head. It's the same thing as my grade school teacher said, believe nothing that you read, see, or hear until you personally take the time to verify that information. Failure to do so opens your mind to accepting all manner of propaganda and outright lies as truth. So whose responsibility is to get to the truth? Yours, mine. It's not the hustler's job to be honest and truthful. His job's the opposite. His job is to con you Your job is not to be conned. Your job is to go and take the time to verify the information. And if you fail to do so, there's a good chance you're going to get conned. You're going to be deceived. Well, whose fault is that? The deceiver's fault? No. Your fault. Well, I don't have time to look into all this stuff. I'm busy. Well, that's an excuse. Maybe you want to go into government. Maybe you'd like to be a judge like this guy I just read about. Because what you're saying is you are not responsible. As long as we run around with that attitude, we're dead meat. We have to be the responsible parties. Today is the 15th anniversary of 9/11. "15 years. That means that people who are basically 18 to 20 years old now have no recollection of that time. Because if a 20-year-old was 5 years old at the time of the Twin Towers, he probably doesn't have much recollection about it. 20 years. That's a great span of time. So all those 20-year-olds have basically no clue what 9/11 was about, and that's what time does. You see, we who were here when 9/11 happened, those memories will be burned into our brains forever. They will never exit. It's the same as the people who were over, had to be at least 15 years old, I would think, maybe 13, maybe 12, in the Kennedy assassination. And that memory is burned into people's memory banks. But those who come after have no memory of it. They can't relate to it. They're being fed different and new propaganda. And this is how they get us. Through timelines, long timelines, incrementally doing this over long time periods. While our minds are set on this, the young minds have no memory of it. They're now being fed that they should be good little Muslims. They should be boys when they're girls and girls when they're boys, or vice versa, or whatever you feel any given day. That's what they're being taught now. They weren't being taught that at 9/11. Okay, so it keeps on moving. My ex-co-host, he's Canadian, he's a young guy, he's always yammering on about 9/11 is an inside job. Well, yeah. But why are you spending all this time on it? All you got to look at the Kennedy assassination. That nonsense went on. It's still going on. Of course it was an inside job. But what is it why are you spending so much time stuck here? Time keeps moving. It doesn't take an engineer. It doesn't even take a semi-intelligent person to understand the towers were taken down. So why does everybody waste all this time on this? It's manipulation. Hold your brain here while we move forward. Now, how do you catch the bandits if you're sitting at the scene of the crime while they take off? A perfect example of that is when the reporter went down to, I think it was the Austin, Texas University on the 50th anniversary of the assassination of John F. Kennedy, and asked the student body their feelings on that fateful date. And he couldn't find a student that even knew Kennedy had been assassinated. All these students said they knew about Kennedy was that he died in office. So while we celebrate or don't celebrate 9/11, it was an inside job. It was done by your government. But then your government is not your government. Your government is the governors of the corporation known as the United States of America. And one thing we know about corporations is they are greedy and they will do what they have to do to get what they want. And 9/11 is just another showing of what they're capable of doing to get what they want. So this idea that you're going to vote for Trump or Hillary, better wake up. We got to get out of this fictional world. We got to get back to law. We got to hold anybody accountable that breaks the law, and that is everybody that has got anything to do with a governmental system or a judicial system. They are all criminals. They are all outside the law. Their job is to cause harm to the good people of these nations. And we're going to turn that around. I have no doubt in my mind we're going to turn this around. May take a while, but we're going to get it done. People are becoming more sensible by the day. They are understanding things better each day. These stories they read and hear and see are getting more ludicrous by the day. And that's waking them up. So do not despair. I know a lot of people have been at this for a long, long time. And a lot of people are extremely tired, broken financially, screwed over, been stomped on by the establishment, stomped on by the judicial system, trying to get them to submit and shut up. And I think we're past the point of that ever happening. The lid is off the box, and you ain't putting the lid back on. Now, what happens from here on in depends on how strong we are. It's our responsibility. And we got to start working at our local levels to build a group of people in each community that do have strong minds and strong spines and strong minds, who can help the others in their neighborhoods, districts, states, understand what has to take place and why it has to take place. I see we're out of time. Hal is on deck here at 3 o'clock. He is one show that I listen to from time to time when I get time, and I must say, I really like his show. I like what he has to say. I like how he says it. And this is what we're going to do. We're just going to keep talking to you people until we get our act together and take on the responsibility that is ours. Okay? Looking for somebody else to solve our problems is not going to solve anybody's problems. So, And I guess tonight I'm going to do it a mainstream radio show tonight at 9 o'clock on Hamilton Radio. I don't even know what the call numbers are for it, but we're going to get in on that tonight and maybe have a little bit of fun about this throne speech tomorrow. So I'll be doing that. I don't even know what it's called. But we're going to do that tonight. Anyway, everybody take care. I hope it didn't bore you. If I did, sorry. That's the way it is. Take care. Back here Tuesday night, 7.
Selling lies and buying time, killing
Everybody take care. Enjoy the day. Get out and get some sun. But Hal is on deck.
Making money, they don't care. Fuck them back, it's only for their mom. They forgive.